One of the most crazy making things in an abusive or highly disordered relationship is not just the way that they hurt you, it's what happens after they hurt you. When you try to come to them and talk to them about what's happened, what they've done to you, how they made you feel, they come into the conversation and they are enraged. So let's say he screamed at you, he called you names, he cornered you, he's flooded your phone, he's threatened the relationship, he's attacked your character, he has completely terrified you, scared you. He's gone off the rails. The conversation ends where you're talking to him about the impact that that's had on you, but he's the victim. You're the cruel one for calling him out on his behavior. You're the one who made him feel unsafe because he has to be perfect around you, and nothing he ever does is good enough. You abandoned him. You can't get over shit, right? You're the one who always does this. You make him feel like a monster. And you are literally sitting there thinking, I'm sorry, what? I came here because you hurt me, and I want to talk to you about that because I want things to be better. And now you're defending yourself against this insane story that they built about how you expressing the pain that they caused you somehow harms them. It is the most crazy making thing that I've seen in abusive relationships. And this is what we're going to break down today because we can attribute this to a disorder specifically, talk about the diagnoses, but that's not really the point. Disordered people, abusive people, highly defensive people, entitled people, all of it. They cannot tolerate accountability. And people who experience your pain as a threat to their self-image, they're dangerous. Because the reality is, when someone has a very fragile or even distorted sense of self, it doesn't mean that they live in your reality, right? So you are providing them information and they immediately feel danger. They twist what you've said based on their feelings. So for example, if you say, that hurt me, they hear, I am bad. If you say you scared me, they hear, you are an abusive POS. You could be just naming the pattern. They just feel attacked. They experience your reality literally as an attack. So they stop relating to what happened and they defend who they believe that they are or maybe who they need to believe that they are. And this is really the beginning of the distortion. They deny, they reinterpret, they fall apart, right? This is what it is. They accuse, and then the whole thing gets flipped on you. And this is DARVO, but that's really not what this video is about. Because the truth is, it's not as simple as just, oh, this is DARVO. Here's another video about that. This is a whole alternate story where this person is loving and misunderstood and you are a cold and damaged, impossible person and you can't see how hard they're trying. And if you could see it, then things would be better. But this is why the actual victim in this scenario feels insane. It's why you feel like you're losing your mind because you're not just dealing with the harm that they've caused you, you're actually dealing with a cognitive distortion and a reality reversal for you. I know in many ways, it almost sounds ridiculous, but hear me out. You say you hurt me and they are trying to prove, no, your hurt is hurting me. It's flipped on you and it's such a trap. So by the end of this video, I want you to understand really like what's happening inside the reversal, why this feels psychologically unbearable, and why you can't communicate your way out of this pattern because it depends on them misunderstanding you. This is never going to change when you're in it. My name is Lisa Sonni. I'm a certified relationship coach. I'm the author of multiple books, and I help women get out of abusive and toxic relationships with men. So let's go back to sort of the beginning, right? This is where this horrible cycle really starts. In a healthy relationship, if you express your pain to your partner, it becomes information. Now, obviously, anybody in the world can become defensive or feel like, that's not fair. They might need a minute. They might need to sort through their own reaction. All of that is completely normal. Like I know I need to take a deep breath if somebody's telling me that information. Everyone has that. But eventually, you are capable of repair and you can start the repair and everybody's pain matters. You can come back to the behavior and go, okay, I hated hearing that, but what did I do? Let's talk about this. They can care about the impact without making the whole thing about who they are as a person. Like they can separate identity from behavior. But in an abusive relationship, and again, particularly with a disordered person, that is absolutely not what's happening because you give them information about the pain that they've caused, you have threatened them immediately. It is a threat, right? Because they have to see themselves as someone that hurt you. And they can't do that because that means something. That's the part they can't really tolerate. So instead of them having the ability to sit there, and this is a distress tolerance skill that many disordered people and abusive, entitled people don't have. They can't process the guilt or the remorse or the responsibility. So they flip and it goes into self-protection. So this is what the denial is functioning as for them. It's protection. Same with blame shifting, DARVO, playing the victim, the character assassination that comes at you. It's self-protection. Not healthy in any way, very defensive. And it protects their self-image, but it sacrifices your reality. So you are not talking about what happened. It becomes a very urgent emergency for them to shut this down because they feel annihilated. So they can't talk about that. They're avoiding dealing with that and they're focusing entirely on you. Like many people in the world, you can feel guilt, right? But you can stay present and it's like, oh, I feel so guilty. That is called capacity. These people don't have that. A non-disordered person can feel bad about what they did without becoming the victim of being told that they hurt you, right? But that's not what a defensive or disordered person has the capacity for. Accountability is too big. And that's how they'll flip it, right? I'm taking accountability. You're not taking accountability. But it's like, what's the evidence of that? But there's not any room for logic or questions or any space for your feelings. So any rabbit hole you're going to chase here, anytime you try to change the dynamic while it's happening, you're not going to get anywhere because this person is typically flooded or split or enraged and just convinced that their narrative is reality. It is real to them. Accountability is exposing. It is very humiliating. And this is what I mean. Like, go back to what I said about this being annihilation. This is a total collapse. So the mind does something extremely fast. Okay. This isn't even necessarily conscious for them. It externalizes. So it pushes the badness out. Like, I did something harmful. You're attacking me. I scared you. You're making me feel like a monster. So it's always this flip. That's the definition of externalization in this context. So you take the whole intolerable feeling inside you and they go like, it's you. It becomes, so externalization of blame is crazy making because again, it is real to them. They believe it as they're saying it. And if you've ever been through this, if you have ever experienced this, I'm telling you, it's like in a second, all of a sudden you're like, wait, what? It is so confusing. None of this is a normal conflict, right? Like in a normal relationship, this isn't what's happening. But here, it's a defense system that takes over the feelings, the entire conversation. Shame turns into an attack. Now, a lot of this is shame intolerance, right? They feel shame and they flip it into an attack. Now, I also hold the belief that plenty of people with NPD don't actually feel shame in the way that we think. Dr. George Simon has often referred to them as shameless. And I think it's a huge myth that narcissism is a shame-based disorder. I don't believe that fundamentally, but shame, remorse, guilt, it can look very similar. But shame, when it is felt, and it is in some of these cases, I want to be careful with the word shame because it always sounds like, oh, they feel shame. Listen, it doesn't excuse the abuse. It doesn't change anything. Shame doesn't mean that you're responsible. They need to be able to tolerate that shame. In fact, shame is because they are literally doing something wrong. So they feel shame. Maybe they feel remorse. Maybe they feel exposed or people know about it and that upsets them. It might be shame. It might be something else. But regardless, shame isn't the whole story here. It explains parts of the mechanism, essentially. But they just can't feel like I did something wrong and then stay in reality. It flips. And so when the shame is intolerable, we're going to change the shame. We're going to go, I'm enraged instead, or fall apart, or blame. They're going to change it. They're going to flip it. They're going to give you a speech. They're going to give you a long lecture about nobody ever sees how hard I try. You're so ungrateful. I do everything for you. They're the victim, right? Now they might cry, beg, rage, threaten to leave you, say nothing they do matters, accuse you of never having loved them. All of it. It is crazy pants. And all of this emotional intensity that they are feeling and expressing at you, I know it can look like remorse from the outside. But the thing with remorse is that usually remorse, shame, it moves you towards changed behavior. It moves you towards repair. No. When you're falling apart, which we call the collapse, that's taking you away from accountability. So you have to kind of see, is this shame or is this a collapse? And I think when you see the pattern of we never get to the accountability part, I think you can pretty much decide for yourself. If they were to say back to you, I hear you, and I really want to understand the impact on you, I want to hear about this, that is what remorse would sound like. So that's how you know that the person actually is feeling shame and remorse. Collapse, it's more like, this is unbearable. I can't tolerate this. And now you need to make me feel better. I'm going to tell you that you think I'm a bad person to bait you into saying, no, you're not a bad person. I love you, and all that crap, right? Their distress becomes an emergency, and they are expecting you to hold that emergency and deal with it. Every time you name your pain gets replaced with their feelings, and then you don't exist. This is why a lot of women who are in relationships with men like this feel invisible. You feel like a ghost. You feel like you don't exist. You feel like you're not living in a shared reality. So this is where people often talk about DARVO. And for anyone who doesn't know that, and I mentioned it earlier, is DARVO, which is deny, attack, reverse victim, and offender. It's a very popular thing that these abusers do. The term was first coined by Dr. Jennifer Freed, who was actually a guest on my podcast last year. It was an absolutely amazing episode. She also coined another term called betrayal blindness, which was the topic of that episode. But this denial, right? They deny the meaning, they deny that it happened, whatever. Then they attack something about you. It could be your tone, your timing, who you are as a person, that you're a terrible wife, whatever, your motives, your mental health, your lack of appreciation. And then here's the reversal, right? They are now the victim. But I do notice something really interesting, that they will often play the victim while denying that they are a victim. I'm no victim. But meanwhile, they are harmed by you. They are the injured party. So they don't feel that they're playing the victim. They don't even want to be the victim because that is perceived as weak. But yet they're putting themselves falsely in that role. And the truth is, this is about as crazy as it sounds, right? You hurt him by being hurt. You abused him by saying, you abused me. You abandoned him by needing space from him screaming in your face. That's you. It's a you problem. You did something wrong. It's insane. But it's why it feels so insane, because the facts are right there. You know what happened. It's happening in the moment. It's right now. And you are here in reality, and you are set on what happened because they're not gaslighting you. Maybe this doesn't work on you anymore. If it does, if this whole flip is still working on you, and it's why I like talking about it, because the more we name it, the more we talk about it, you can see through it, and you're not going to fall for this anymore. Get yourself to a place where you're like, I can name this pattern so you don't feel sucked in to this version of reality. But often when it is so relentless, when it is just being peppered at you constantly, all of the accusations and the yelling and the tone and the relentless talking, could be a text, could be them blowing up your phone, it could be them right in your face. The roles get reversed, and they get reversed so aggressively that you start responding to that flipped version, right? So maybe you're apologizing. Maybe you're comforting them or explaining or proving that you're not cruel. You don't want to be seen as a person who's destroying your partner. You can't believe that they see you this way. You're absolutely floored that this is happening. So you are explaining yourself and defending yourself. You know what's not happening right now? If I could just point this out, the original harm. We're not talking about that, right? You're not talking about what he did. You're talking about how he felt, how you made him feel. You're apologizing when you are the one who brought up what they did already. It's actually double abuse, double pain for you, because now you're sitting here defending yourself to someone who is abusing you. It's crazy. And this is kind of an interesting part here, because they're building a story, right, where they are the injured party, and they really do believe it, right? This is the crazy thing, is people are like, oh, they believe their own lies. He's delusional. He's crazy. He's making it up. This is a reality for someone who is disordered. Now, people doing this may be making this up, but actually, it's really interesting how it is very true for the person in the moment. They actually build a whole alternative story, okay? They have a whole different thought process here. And in their story, they are trying so hard to be better. In fact, they're getting better. They're just misunderstood, right? It's you. They love you more. They would never leave you if you were struggling and you're the awful person, right? They're finally changing, or they're just about to change, or they were just about to agree to go to therapy, or therapy was just about to have a breakthrough, or whatever. But you become this awful person who just refuses to see them for who they are. You're negative and damaged, and you're impossible. you're traumatized from your ex. You're bringing all your baggage into this. You're punishing, you're awful. You're protecting yourself. You're making them pay for your ex's abuse, all of this stuff, right? And it's coming at you like just so hard at you. You're so confused. And sometimes it's a conscious strategy that they're using, but often it's not, right? This isn't typically so like calculating. This is their reality in the moment. More often than not, they literally feel in their heart of hearts like they are the victim because their whole reality that they've created, I call it reality, I'm using that term quite lightly here, but it's like it's swallowed the facts. It's gone now. The facts are irrelevant. That's not even part of it. They can't see any of that. They have a feeling and that is the truth, period. But in reality, like real reality, their feeling isn't the same thing as truth. And this is what I want victims to remember, is that they can be saying it, they can mean it, they can feel it. Whether they're making it up or not is not the point. It's not actual reality. This whole like, oh, there's two sides. No, there's literally what happened. And then that's it. There's facts. What was said. And yes, what was felt is what was felt. And that's when people are like, oh, there's two sides. Yeah, there's justification and context for an abuser who wants you to understand that they only yelled because you weren't listening, or they only freaked out because they felt abandoned or whatever. But at the end of the day, reality is still that you are being abused. And I will say this ad nauseum for the rest of my life. Intent matters to a degree. Impact matters more. It doesn't matter if they're doing this on purpose. It doesn't matter if this is a strategy. It doesn't matter if they don't know what they're doing and they really believe this in those moments. The impact on you is the only thing that matters. You have to take care of yourself. Listen, we've all dated men like this, right? You get it. They feel so victimized by accountability. They genuinely believe that. So much so that you see this constantly in this narrative of like women never take accountability when there are literal studies that prove that men have a much harder time taking accountability. Are there women who don't take accountability? Obviously. But the victim of abuse is never the person who is meant to be taking accountability. The person with the harmful behavior needs to be the one taking it. And it's usually the person who never is. So even if they are describing this to you as you attacked them just because you named the impact, it doesn't mean that you attacked them. It means they experienced it falsely as an attack because they cannot take accountability. Now, I know what you're thinking, right? Send him this video. Let him see what he's doing. He will not care. He will not see it. And he will just call me names like he probably calls you names. And this is the thing with the two realities, right? We just see things differently. No, not in this case. That's not what I'm describing, right? We're not talking about two different perspectives because every perspective, you could argue it deserves the same conversation, the same weight. But like one person saying, you screamed at me, you call me names, you blocked the door, like literally saying things that the person has done. And the other person is like, you hate me. You want me to fail. What? They're not in the same category. They're not. Behavior is something that we can observe, right? We can see it with our eyes and it's also felt, but we can see it. Impact can only be described. So motives get invented. And that is crazy because we assume the motives. Now, you may assume the person is trying to hurt you. And frankly, maybe they are because there's lots of evidence to prove that most of the time these people know what they're doing, which doesn't mean that it's calculated strategy, but they know what they're doing. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be focusing on what they did. Victims are not perfect reporters of everything. I get that. But we are not living in the same reality when things get flipped on us. Abusive and disordered people always want to use their interpretation of your motives. And do you notice how it avoids accountability for their behavior? Like they put themselves, and this is very superior because they put themselves in this role of I get to decide what your motives were. I get to decide that you meant to hurt me, meant to harm me, that you're attacking me. They can assign all of that to you, and that's so true. But if you say you're hurting me on purpose, and again, they most likely are, you're a terrible person for saying that. Meanwhile, you're literally saying reality. But facts always just disappear behind the story that they've created. They have this false narrative, and that becomes their reality. Now, a lot of times they might be claiming that they're improving or getting better. It's a very outdated old myth that disordered people just don't go to therapy and they don't get help or anything like that. Now, they don't actually get help because they're not truly open to building those skills. And in many cases, even they can't develop those skills. But regardless, this whole myth that they don't go to therapy, it's old. Therapy used to be really unpopular and it used to be weak and all the things. Now people are left and right talking about, oh, I'm going to my therapist. I have a therapist. Improvement is cool. Therapy is cool. So they go to therapy and they learn therapy words and they learn how to weaponize it against you and say, but I'm going to therapy. Look what I'm doing. My therapist says you're the problem, right? Let's say they started therapy and they had a really good week. They read a book or they cried or whatever. They made a promise and they say that this time will be different. They probably even believe it as they're saying it. It's actually kind of interesting. They can say something and they mean it in the moment, but as soon as they don't mean it anymore, they won't experience what they said as a lie because they meant it. They just changed their mind. So that's how they can avoid thinking that they're a liar or thinking that they're making false promises. And that's the problem with this whole I'm doing better story that they're trying to spin with you, because this whole story can just become another weapon against you, right? Your caution is now you're being negative. You never get over the past. Oh, you're afraid of me. You never support me. It's crazy making. I'm the women that have been through this, you can picture it. You can feel it. I bet you listening to me talk, you're like, I can feel how awful this was. I remember, I know. Hopefully it's in your past, but if it's in your present, there are ways to leave relationships like this. I do work with women on an ongoing basis to help them exit and heal from relationships like this. Now, one of the things that not all perpetrators of abuse do, but it's just a special kind of crazy when they do, is there is this sort of relentless breakdown. It's coming at you, right? Many times abusers will stonewall you and leave you silent for days, and it's devastating, okay? Let's talk about the ones that are relentless. Not the one fight, but they keep chasing you. You leave the room, they're going to text you, blow up your phone. If you put your phone down, you come back and it'll have 96 text messages coming at you. And all of it is breakup threats and promises or accusations or both, or name calling and attacking you and just making you the perpetrator, right? It's just a whole thread of DARVO. The name for this is psychological flooding, right? They're literally coming at you. It happens when the system is just overwhelmed beyond its ability to even process anything. So you can't think clearly, you can't recover, you can't get away from it, you can't hold a single thought long enough to even act on it. And this is why the freeze response is very common, and even the fawn response in the trauma response is fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. Freeze and fawn are the two most common. In something like this, when they're just flooding you, it's oh my God, because you're in a double bind, right? So there's nothing you can do to change the situation or make it better in the moment. So you're paralyzed effectively. And this is why a lot of victims sound totally frantic and people think, oh, the person's being so dramatic. Absolutely not. The nervous system is trying to survive an argument that will never end. You keep trying to explain yourself, which is your first mistake. Don't do that. It's so hard because it's just coming at you, coming at you, coming at you. And you're sitting here going, oh my God, use the skills that I have. Don't say anything. Just stay out of it. Step out of the frame. Okay. But it's coming at you, coming at you. You're going to give in eventually, right? If you can't remove yourself from the space, which if you can, please do that. But the story is wrong and disoriented, but it still wears you down. It's crazy making. And I think what's interesting is I always see sort of two types of women in this circumstance, okay? There are some that get dragged into this reality and you're like, I can't believe he actually thinks this of me. Am I doing this? Is this me? Am I the abuser? Oh my God. And you're freaking out. But then there's also the women that are like, this person is out of their mind. This is so unfair. This is not me. This is absolutely not. I am totally clear. I know what happened. I know the pattern. I know the impact. I trust that I'm not exaggerating. Which one of those two is worse? I don't know. They're both pretty awful. In my own personal experience, I am much more the second woman. I am much more this is not what's actually happening here. I can't believe that this person sees it this way. So luckily, I'm still holding reality. But I will say both are terrible because when you know reality, I don't know if it feels more crazy making that and you feel so far away from that person. It's also confusing to be sucked into it, wondering if you're the abuser. Who can say? Never compare trauma. the maybe I'm wrong pain versus the I know exactly what happened and now I'm trapped with someone who refuses to live in the same reality as me pain. I don't know. I don't know. Both are psychological torture, okay? This is a really difficult thing. Now, clarity is probably better in the long run because it helps you tell the truth. I'm not saying which is more painful, but just which is closer to you moving forward and you getting out. You need to know what's actually happening. You need to be in what I call actual reality, right? It's devastating to realize that the person you're with is just, I want to say on another planet, but of course I mean that kind of in a slang way. But an abuser makes you so responsible for their self-image, right? That's really a huge part of what's going on because you don't really get to exist as a separate person. Your pain is a threat to their identity. So everything is a problem, right? Your boundaries are rejection and your fear is an accusation and you're losing it. So you actually start managing how they see themselves. So this is what women do. You try to describe how you feel, your hurt and pain, but you're doing it in a way that doesn't make them feel bad. I don't really know how to do that. There's no effective way to do that. I know how to try to do that. I've never really seen it work because anything you say will be received as pain and an attack to them. So you're here hurting. You're reassuring them. You make accountability just soft enough. Just, okay, right? Just trying so hard to make it so that it's soft enough that they can tolerate it. But it's impossible. You can't because that's image management. You're managing their image for them. And now you are responsible as well for maintaining that version of themselves just because they can't handle it when faced with actual reality. This is why so many victims feel erased because there's no room for your experience. Their self-protection takes up all the space. You're not being met as a person. Your job is to regulate them. So you keep explaining. And this is a real trap, right? My whole thing is step out of that. Use the JADE method. Do not justify, do not argue, do not defend, do not explain. That is so hard when you're in the moment. When someone is actively rewriting reality, not saying something, people feel like they're giving in, right? You're stepping into their frame by not defending yourself. Like, what do you mean, don't defend myself? Look at the awful things they're saying about me. No, because when you don't correct the lie, I know that it feels like, well, then I'm basically admitting that it's true. You're absolutely not. A lot of these people really love the drama. And again, whether it's consciously or unconsciously, they love the drama. It makes them feel in control. They are making all of these big feelings and they're driving you bonkers and you're screaming or crying or defending yourself. And it's proof that you love them. But that only feeds the cycle, okay? We don't feed the cycle. Take the peanuts away. We're not feeding the cycle. I know you don't want to be seen in the way that they're describing you. I know you don't want to feel that way. I get it. It makes sense. All of your feelings are so valid, but the more you explain, the more material you're handing them to just twist. You're not going to win the argument. That's not the way out. The way out is to just refuse it, step out of the frame, because the distortion is what keeps you attached. This is an incredibly hard situation to leave because honestly, you love the person. Now, you might be stuck in a trauma bond. A trauma bond is an unhealthy attachment that exists in any relationship where there's abuse and devaluation and cruelty, but it's mixed with intermittent reinforcement and kindness and softness sometimes. Abusive relationships tend to have that cycle, right? So it's just, you never know what's up, what's down. One day it's hot, one day it's cold, and you're constantly feeling like, what's going to happen today? You're living braced all the time. But regardless of whether or not you're in an active trauma bond, you love the person, and your mind is trying to make sense of all of this. And I think humans really want something that's certain. We want clarity, you want the truth to be acknowledged. So you want accountability. That's not happening here. I know you want your relationship to feel sane again. And I know that sometimes it feels like you're right there, but you're not. Not with a disordered person, not with a man who is entitled and in denial and manipulative. And did I say entitled? Because I really want to hit that point twice. I know we oscillate between all these feelings, right? In pain, aware, devastated, hopeful, in love, miserable. But I'm telling you, that intermittent hope, it gets you, right? Harm happens, then there's a reversal, and there's exhaustion. Could be tenderness, kindness, hope, and then rinse and repeat. Do it again. Your body is going to start chasing repair that would make the whole thing make sense, but it's never going to make sense because there's never really going to be repair. Okay? You're not going to break this cycle by being a person who explains it better and using the right words and the right day and the right time. You don't need them to agree that the relationship is unsafe. And that's what we're doing, right? You're the abuser. No, you're the abuser. When do you get out of this? You know who the abuser is. You already know. Survivors and victims are just constantly trying to communicate their way out of this, right? You think you can talk your way into him understanding you, understanding this pattern, understanding themselves. Maybe if they could go to therapy, maybe if they could understand this disorder, then they would. Nah, probably not. Probably not. You can attribute so much of what I just said to specific traits, specific personality disorder traits. Why is this all happening? I refer you to the list of 9 traits. This pattern is truly so crazy making because it doesn't just hurt you, it makes you defend yourself against this false story that they created after they hurt you. So when you talk to them about your pain, you talk to them about what they've done, their own behavior, you want accountability, they're going to build a story where you are cruel. And all the while, they're going to deny that they're playing the victim because they genuinely don't want to be seen as a victim because that's weak. That's a bad thing. And they're not bad. You're bad. It just keeps the story going. You're never going to get more clear. You're never going to say this in the right way. You're only going to become more exhausted, more defensive, totally dysregulated, and more trapped. So the goal is not to get them to agree that they hurt you. The goal is to stop letting their reversal decide what you are allowed to know. Your reality is reality. Subscribe if you're not already. And if you're in a relationship like this, if you're trying to figure it out, or you're freshly out of a relationship like this and you need some support in rebuilding, you can work with me one-on-one. You can join any of my group coaching programs, or you can join me inside my monthly online community called She Rises Collective. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.